Discover your inner goddess and live up to your highest value and most abundant potential. Welcome to Grateful Goddesses, a podcast that empowers you to unleash your inner goddess and take the leap of faith to live your best life. Your guide, Pulver, joins her fellow goddesses in soulful conversations about gratitude, personal growth, authentic living, and a bevy of topics affecting women today. Let's start the show with your host, Pulver.
Welcome everyone to Grateful Goddesses, and I'm really grateful that you're here. You know, we're all on this yellow brick road. We're all on this journey to find love, to find knowledge, to find our way home, to find the courage in life. And it can be really hard. We come in contact with wicked witches, and we come in contact with the poppy field, and we fall asleep when we don't have energy. And just like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, we have to learn from Glinda the Good Witch that we had the power in us all along. We had home in us all along. We had love, courage, knowledge. We had, these answers, these qualities inside us. We just needed help to tap into them. Dorothy had Toto, she had Glinda, she had the Munchkins to help her, and we have each other. We have this goddess community that you come to, you listen to, and we are here to empower and inspire you. When we listen to stories of people's journey on their yellow brick road, and perhaps the roadblocks they encounter and how they've lifted themselves up, and they never had to go to the wizard to find the answer. They realized on their own that it was inside of them. So today we are going to hear about a yellow brick road story. In fact, a yellow brick road story holding a yellow umbrella. And it is our guest, Jason Rosenthal. Jason Rosenthal is an author, foundation board chair, public speaker, and lawyer. He is also the subject of an essay written by his wife, Amy Kraus Rosenthal, called "You May Want to Marry My Husband," that went viral and was read by millions of readers worldwide. Jason was married to Amy for 26 years before she died of ovarian cancer at the age of 51. On Amy's last Valentine's Day, the New York Times published her modern love piece, telling the world that she would die of cancer and that her beloved husband deserved another shot at happiness. The love letter was printed 10 days before her death in 2017. She titled it, "You May Want to Marry My Husband." Since Amy's passing, Jason speaks about getting in touch with real pain and how his loss made him reevaluate his life's work. Jason has talked for years about whether his chosen career path gave him real fulfillment. He is now the executive director of a nonprofit organization created in Amy's name, the Amy Kraus Rosenthal Foundation. He is fueled by its mission to provide programs that encourage child literacy and funding for early detection of ovarian cancer. On Father's Day in June 2018, Jason Rosenthal, the subject of Kraus Rosenthal Poetic Tribute, publicly responded with his own modern love column titled, "My Wife Said You May Want to Marry Me." Since his wife's passing, Jason shares how he is coping with her death. He is grateful for the wife who not only gave him decades of happiness, but permission to find happiness after her death. Welcome, Jason, to Grateful Goddesses.
Thank you for having me.
Can you relate, Jason, to any of the characters in The Wizard of Oz?
Oh, boy, I haven't thought about that in a while. It's a good question. I mean, I guess, Dorothy's tenacity and her ability to overcome lots of obstacles and get to where she wanted to go, that resonates with me.
And I also wanted to share that when, I talk a lot about The Wizard of Oz, and because I feel like I'm on that journey and we all need the support of others. And when I was listening to your TED Talk, to Amy's TED Talk, looking through all of the wonderful movies that she did and her talks, etc., I realized that many of her lessons can actually be seen in the different characters. When she talks about the magic, the serendipitous moments, about fear, like I thought about the lion, and she talks about walking through fear and not around fear, and that the lion has to just go through it. And all of her amazing stories that she tells really can relate. I wanted to share with you that today I'm wearing a ring that was inspired by your late wife, Amy. When I would see her in the neighborhood writing her stories at Starbucks or Julius Meinl, which is a coffee shop up the street, she was wearing this necklace. It was clear with like a snow dome. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. And I said to her, that is so beautiful and whimsical and magical. And I was inspired. And this was like 4 or 5 years ago. And I ran out and I found this little snow dome kind of ring. And I wear it. And it's really inspired by Amy. But can you tell us more about your late wife, Amy Kraus Rosenthal? A little bit more about her personality and.
I could talk for a long time. How much time do we have? No, of course I can. I'd be happy to share it. And I enjoy talking about her. It really, makes me feel good and brings me, it brings my heart open now. It used to be a little bit more painful, but now with some space and some time, it feels really good to continue to talk about her. The word that always comes up when I talk about Amy, even though it sounds a little bit cliche, is the word creativity. And it's really true. And I don't mean that in the sense that, oh, she was a creative writer, which she was. She really, really lived to create. You know what I mean? Whether that was in her personal life, in her professional life, it just was in her DNA. And so that came out in the way of writing these beautiful children's books, adult memoirs, like you said earlier, creating these incredible films, some whimsical, some really, really meaningful, and doing public talks to children and to adults. And so that's really what I think about when I think about her. And the other word that comes to mind, which is really, really important, because I learned a lot about this from her, which is that she was incredibly kind, and she wasn't kind to get any accolades for being kind or anything like that. It was really just natural to her. She did things for people sometimes that they didn't even know she was doing, and that really is the way she lived her life.
Well, I remember I mentioned before this episode that I would do yoga with her, practice yoga with her in your home.
Yeah.
And it was Ashtanga yoga, and it was a small group. And she was so kind. She invited me to try it. And her and her friend were just making these poses so effortlessly, and I would be struggling. And she, after class one day, she touched my arm and she said, "It's okay. Here's a book. Go home, practice. You'll get it." She was so encouraging and supportive. Yeah. And I do remember that about her as well.
I remember originally practicing yoga with Amy, and I was very intimidated because she started before I did.
Right.
Trust me, I couldn't even touch my toes. So it was a learning process, but we had a lot of fun practicing yoga together, traveling to practice yoga and things like that. So it was a big part of our life.
Absolutely. I'd like to welcome our featured goddesses, Alyssa and Dena, on to join us in this conversation with you. And Dena herself has suffered through loss. We talk about this on the Goddess show quite a bit, and how her stages of grief and how she's dealing right now. Of course, she remarried, which is beautiful. And she has some questions to you, though, about loss specifically.
Absolutely. Sure. Hi, Dena.
Hi, Jason. So good to see you.
Likewise.
So yes, you and I get to be part of this icky club, but yet we learn a lot as we go through it. And I certainly, like you, try to live my life better and fuller and as best as I can every day, although sometimes I get caught up in day to day and don't always do my best. But I know that we share something a little bit in common, in that Josh very much said to me, and I don't really remember where in his illness we were. It wasn't at the end, that I would go on and get married. I said, no, there's no need for that, of course, whatever. And then he went on to tell both my mom and his mother that whoever I pick, they need to embrace, love, adore, etc. And I believe that it very much helped me move forward. Just having that message, like you said before, that little angel on your shoulder saying, go on and do this. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you felt when Amy made a much more public declaration to you in the world?
I'm feeling a little emotional just seeing you and hearing about Josh, because
Same.
Of course knew him and knew what a terrific guy he was and how important he was to my brother-in-law, Joe. So forgive me. But, here's the thing. My path forward was made a lot easier by Amy's very, very public gift to me. She said clearly to many millions of people all over the world, that here's this guy out there, and that Jason, it's okay, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to find love again, and please do that for me, and I don't know what it would have been like, to be honest with you, without that tremendous gift. I think about it often, and I can't tell you how much that meant to me to have those words.
Yeah, I feel the same. And when people ask, I don't have the answer because I only have it this way. So I don't know what it would have been like to not have that sort of gift.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because my husband and I have talked about it. And I said to him, especially when I had my cancer diagnosis and I just wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I said, I want you, luckily I caught it early, Jason, just by the way, but through your mind, it goes through like the worst case scenario.
Oh, of course.
And
sure.
I said, I want you to find someone right away. And he said, well, if I die before you, I want you to wait a year. I said, what? Why am I giving you like permission? And you're giving me a year. And he's like, I want to make sure that the kids like him, et cetera, et cetera. And anyways, it's funny though. I said to him last night, we watched your TED Talk, and I said, no, you need to give me like permission right away. I don't want to have to wait a year. Of course I'll take my time in grieving, but, so Alyssa.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I've learned because of, all of the things I've done publicly, I've had so many people reach out to me in different ways, in different forms of loss. And the lesson I learned pretty quickly is that we all go through this process in a different way. I know there's those well-known stages of grief, which I don't think that I subscribe to, but we all have to take this path in our own way. Take as much time as you need to grieve, right? Because that's going to be different for all of us.
Absolutely. Alyssa has a question related to that too.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that we all, obviously everyone grieves in their own way, and most of us, it's probably a very private thing with our, ourselves and our family. In the Jewish religion, we have Shiva, where we have our closest, our nearest and dearest come and sort of, physically be with us for however many days you decide to do that. But yours was very different in that, in addition to, no doubt, being surrounded by your closest family and friends, your children, that you were thrust into sort of this public, for lack of a better word, limelight, right? Where I think it was just, about 10 or so days or a couple weeks after Amy's passing that this article hits. And then the world knows who Jason Rosenthal is. If they didn't already, they know who Amy Kraus Rosenthal is. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit more about how that, do you think Amy really, that was part of the goal in some ways, not just this beautiful love letter to you and this permission that she gave you to go and have this beautiful life and find love perhaps again. But do you think that was also part of the goal there, the mission to have sort of the world embrace you in that way?
It's a very well said question, and I think about it a lot. The essay came out 10 days before she died, so she was unable to really process the amazing response that it got. But I do think that in some way, I could talk in detail about whether I even thought the essay would be published, even though living with a successful writer, you never know. And I certainly had absolutely no idea this kind of response that it would get. But yes, I do think that at some level, she knew where she wanted it placed. She knew who read that column, and she knew it would be widely read. And I think that she did know that it was going to put me in this position. But who could have anticipated really all of the response that it got? And yes, I was thrust immediately into the public's perception, right? But at the same time, I was so overwhelmed with my own personal grief for quite some time that it took me a while to process all of that myself. And it wasn't until I really was asked to do that TED Talk that I started to write it and process it. And then after it was delivered, that's when things really started to become, extremely more public. But when I look back, in answer to your question, in anticipation of this talk this morning, I realized that it was really just less than 2 months after Amy died that I was sitting in Los Angeles, California, in front of 10 of the most powerful Hollywood producers in the business. And I can't even believe that. It was almost a fog, So there were those moments where it was pretty overwhelming.
And some of the responses, I know you've talked about this publicly, were actually quite humorous or even children reaching out on behalf of their single parents, or, just other people, women from around the world, that made you laugh. And I have to think that could have only, even for a moment, to have that sort of joy during that time must have been just such an additional gift from Amy.
It was. It really, really was. And, yes, I got a lot of funny sort of people women reaching out to me with proposals and things. But the bulk of the responses that I got from her column and from my work are just beautiful. Really just connecting with a stranger who is similarly going through loss, loss of any form. And it was really, really important and meaningful to me to connect with people that way.
And interestingly, Amy talks so much about connectedness in her own TED Talk, and I think that was probably one of her original missions with, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, that great Millennium Park, sort of the origin of the yellow umbrella, and just how many people showed up to support her. And we'll talk about that, but just the connectedness was it seemed like really part of her goal,
For sure.
And her, that's really incredible.
Yeah.
It was definitely a ripple effect. I couldn't help but think too, I did attend the memorial at Temple Shalom that was packed, standing room only type. And hearing your children talk about their mother, and what I loved about it was the celebration of her life. And of course there was a Shiva in the synagogue, etc. But you talk in your TED Talk about the birth, death, and how we're afraid as a society to talk about death while you're healthy, and how, you went through, like, there's birthday and we have these big celebrations, but a birth death is, it's, of course it's sad, but just really celebrating a person's life. Can you talk to us more about that term?
Sure. I mean, the point being that we in this country and other countries, but primarily here, we are very uncomfortable with the subject of death. We avoid it, and part of my work moving forward after Amy died was to say, you know what, I went through this process, which was really, really difficult, and I'd like it to be a little bit easier for people and a little bit more acceptable to talk about the end of life. Because let's face it, that's where we're all headed, whether we die prematurely or live a long, healthy life. And so I was very impressed by what you said in your, ability to talk to your husband at this point about some really meaningful issues. And so I've been trying to encourage people to do the same thing. And I think it's super, super important. And I think over the last 2 years, as bizarre and difficult and painful as they've been, because of the pandemic, we've connected a little bit more with what loss really, really means.
Absolutely. With people losing their jobs and people losing control, just feeling that feeling of loss of control in all areas of your life. And you can either give up and curl up in a ball, or you can take a step and, control what you can control and embrace what you can't. We talk about that a lot on the show. Alyssa, you wanted to ask about Amy's mission.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the Amy Kraus Rosenthal Foundation. It has two goals that are very near and dear to Amy's heart: children literacy and ovarian cancer early detection research. So can you talk about sort of how that whole organization was founded and your role in it and what it's doing? And then let's share with our viewers the upcoming Yellow Umbrella event.
I'm really grateful that you asked that. Thank you so much. Yeah, after Amy died, I just knew that I wanted to do a couple of things. And one was to start a foundation in her memory and in her honor. Now, I served on a board in my early 20s, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I threw together this just amazing board of directors. And we started this foundation. And it's our third annual benefit is coming up in October. But it's a dual mission. Of course, important to Amy and to our family. One is to raise awareness of early detection of ovarian cancer. And the other aspect is child literacy, like you said. And we've been so blessed that we've donated literally hundreds of thousands of books at this point to kids in need all over the country. And we are now in our fourth or fifth researcher who's been issued a grant because of our foundation, who's doing some great work in the area of early detection. So we hope one day that we won't have to have this foundation. But it's been really, really wonderful and meaningful work. And yes, I just happened to bring the invitation here. I know you may not be able to see it, but we have an event coming up on October 14th. And like I said, it's our third annual benefit, and we have some wonderful performers. And, it's now in our third year. And so I think you'll see a lot more content on what we're really doing with people's support.
And it be virtual, in person, or both?
Yeah, no, it's virtual again. Yeah, it's virtual again. It was I think it really worked well last year, and we just had to make the call early on to do it virtually. That was the call.
Right. Well, hopefully a lot of our viewers then will be able to attend from all over the world, and that's very exciting. And, just to go back to this whole concept of the yellow umbrella, which I think, as Karen said before, was just, one of her many whimsical, things that she did. I loved that idea that, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but I think it was August 8th in 2008 that she decided to... At 808,
right.
Exactly, to have this event here in Chicago at Millennium Park, which is such a kind of gathering place and such a notable place, and create things together. As we talked about, she was so creative. You said she lived to create, and together with this sort of feeling of connecting with people, how amazing to bring together, in many ways, a bunch of strangers from all over a really big city and make things. And they made some really cool things, and they did some things like splashed in the water of the fountain and went up and made a stranger's day and did all these sort of cool, amazing things almost as the light was setting. Just what a beautiful thing. But she brought a yellow umbrella, and I'm sure it wouldn't have been hard to find her. She had a camera with her, right? And she was from her work, and but this yellow umbrella became this this amazing symbol of all the work that she did, and that's why I think it's great that you're doing these yellow umbrella events and sort of carrying it through. And I know when she passed, a lot of people had yellow umbrellas that they were sort of surrounding our neighborhood with, and in your front lawn probably. And I just it was more of a comment that I just think that's amazing.
And she talks about not having the yellow umbrella planned out when she went. She didn't own one. And I love that she talks about, again, it reminds me of the scarecrow wanting to know all the answers, but she's like, just go and do as you, I forget the exact terms, but figure it out as you go. And it's okay. We don't all have to be like this brainiac, know all the answers. Life just will take us there in the serendipitous moments that we have. And I know Dena was telling us of a serendipitous moment the other day that related to Josh. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, this morning being at the fraternity house? Which
no. One? Well, that is one, that her daughter is at Michigan.
This morning I tracked Alexandra. She's at Michigan, just started, and she's tailgating. And this is the first time that this fraternity popped up, but she's apparently at her father's fraternity house.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
But no, you talked about Amy's article being published on Josh's birthday.
Oh, yeah. The New York Times article was published on his birthday.
I did not know that.
I did not know that either until I was refreshing myself.
Great serendipity. I love it.
Yeah.
I can't believe your daughter's in college. That blows my mind.
I can't believe it either. I just remember Paris babysitting. So the viewers listening, Jason and we go way back. There's a lot of good memories.
So Dena, you found love again, and you're remarried.
I did, but I wanted to go into stuff. I wanted to ask Jason. Something just came to top of my head. There seems to be so many mantras that Amy has put out there, and I wonder if there's some that you and your family sort of live by. I mean, I know one that I tried to live by is make the most of your time. Instill that in my family. I could do better with that as well. But I mean, the legacy is deep, deep, deep. Clearly,
it's deep. Yeah, I mean, it's
so many things, but the highlights are a few faves.
But yeah, sure. The theme of our party actually this year is ATM, which Amy made a short film about, which is Always Trust Magic, which I love. And the other thing that's very simple but is very, very powerful, which is pay attention to what you pay attention to, and that for me means some of the things she describes about, look, we have limited time on this earth, right? So why not try to appreciate something beautiful every day? And I think that's really simple and incredibly, incredibly powerful. And so I try to do that. Like, yeah, that is a stunning tree out my window right now that I'm looking at, how many days will I have here to look at a tree like that? So little things like that.
And you could look outside today in Chicago and say, oh, it's cloudy, it's going to rain, or wow, look at that tree. I love that. But I was saying before, Dena has found love again. And she had a question for you about finding love again.
Well, so everyone wants to know where you're at. And certainly, as you said before, when you sat down and realized that Hollywood was looking at this love letter that she wrote at the New York Times, who's playing you in the movie?
I can't give you any details. I have no idea. Hollywood is a weird world that I don't understand. And there's really nothing to report other than the fact that they claim to still be interested and there's a screenplay. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yes, Day got made. It was great. I loved it.
Yes, Day was wonderful. And Jennifer Gardner herself is just like the way she appears is really who she is. She's just a beautiful, beautiful human being. Yeah, and honors Amy's work. But so I want to just start by saying that in my book, I write about what it's like for someone like me to even enter the process of thinking about being with someone again, because I know that not just men, but many of us struggle with what that's like. For me, this was totally unexpected. I hadn't known how to navigate that world in literally 3 decades. And so I think I really wanted to touch upon it in the book, to be honest, that's part of the process. But where I am right now, I'm in a wonderful, meaningful relationship, and I feel really, really lucky.
Happy for you.
Thank you.
We're so happy for you. If anyone wants to contact you, get in touch with you, reach out to you, how can they do that, Jason?
I have a website, jasonbrosenthal.com, and I'm on Instagram. I'm a little less active as some people, but it's just at Jason B. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Jason, for sharing with us your beautiful story and for teaching us how to tap into all of those qualities that we had in us all along. And I hope that you continue on your yellow brick road with your yellow umbrella and help inspire others as you seem to continue to be doing. So thank you for joining us, and we're so grateful to you.
It's really great to see all of you. Thank you for having me.
Up next, favorite things, opening up to happiness and joy.
So welcome everyone to Grateful Goddesses with Jason Rosenthal, our guest. And this is like an adult show and tell. I'm a preschool teacher. I've read many of Amy's books to my 4 and 5-year-olds. I've seen the impact that her stories have had on the children and on myself. And of course, all those books are my favorite things. But what we do is we go around just like you were in preschool, and we have an adult version of show and tell, because it's important to focus on what brings you happiness and joy, and hearing what one person's favorite you may want to take on and try, and why not? It's all about having fun. So one of my favorite things, and I may have mentioned this before, but that's okay, is my rollerball lip. I don't know if you remember this from the 70s. It's bubble gum. Do you remember it? The gloss?
Yeah.
You put it on, because you kissed a lot of girls, right, Jason?
I was going to say, I remember how it tastes, but I don't know if that's appropriate.
It tastes so
Bonnie
good.
Bell? Is it Bonnie Bell?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. No, maybe not this one, but it's similar, right? But I love the gloss, and I love the feel, and I love the nostalgia, because it brings me back to those days, of the 70s, and thinking I was so cool with my Love's Baby, with my roller lip gloss, and also my Love's Baby Soft perfume. If anyone, did you all own that? Jason, you owned that, right?
No.
So, Alyssa, what did you bring to share?
So I'm going to share 2 things today. First, because it's so appropriate for the day, one of the programs I've been watching lately is the Modern Love sort of vignettes that they've been putting out. I believe it's Netflix, Dena, Netflix maybe. And obviously inspired by these Modern Love columns that have appeared. And I think it just sort of started up again with another group of them, but there's a couple of seasons, and they are just sort of each one, more beautiful than the next. And it's, we just talked about the Mini Driver one that just appeared about losing a spouse. And so they're just beautiful, beautiful stories. I have a tissue box next to me, for each one of those. But those are beautiful, and I wanted to sort of share that. The second thing is more tangible, and this is a necklace that my mom gave me. My dad gave it to her probably 50 years ago. My dad passed away 5 years ago, but this has her initials on it, and my little secret, little compartment in here, oops, it just fell out, is a black and white, very old photo of my dad, and what I think she put in when he gave it to her. So I just kind of brought this out, and I've been wearing it lately. It makes me think of him, and I love the little hidden gem. So that's my favorite thing for the day.
That is beautiful. It's always nice to have a token from someone who has passed. Dena, what did you bring along?
Okay, so I had to bring all my Amy,
hey,
Paris, Little P, all of them. I can't pick one.
Spoon.
I feel like so attached to these books. Like I've said now, I don't know how many times in the show, this is family to me, these people that we're talking about. And I couldn't pick just one. But I do have a signed copy from Amy. This is very near and dear. I have told my children many times, these do not get thrown away from your bookcases. And then, of course, we were at the launch of Paris's at the Paris Club. And I'm fortunate also to have a signed bestseller in my home. So
nice.
These are really near and dear and special. And I look at them often. So thank you, Jason, for allowing me to be a part of this legacy. It means a lot.
What I love about her children's books is when as a teacher, when I'm reading the stories, they're so funny, like for adults to understand all the the underlying themes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
She was so good at that. And she was so good at looking at words and mixing them up and turning them upside down. And what a mind for that.
I gave this one to Alex when she graduated. I thought it was so perfect.
Yes. I gave that to the 3 children that I taught last year. And Jason, I had a preschool in my basement. Because of COVID, I didn't go back to the school. So I gave them all that book at the end of the year.
That book has been so meaningful to so many people. It accelerates every graduation season. It's not just a children's book, It really speaks to a lot of people. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Jason, it's your turn to be at our show and tell circle. What did you bring?
Well, one thing I was going to bring, but it was too big, but I think Amy would have been mortified, because if you recall in one of her books, she wrote a short essay about how grateful she was that her husband didn't play golf. And now I'm a little obsessed with the game. So it's come full circle, but I left my golf bag in the other room. I brought this, which is an R, as you can see, right?
Yes.
And in the back, Amy inscribed it with all of our names. And in my book, I do, write a little bit about its significance. And what it was every Shabbat dinner on Friday night, we would gather either as a family or an extended family or a group of friends. And people were just a little bit intimidated because we would pass this around, and anybody who was holding it had to share a small story about something meaningful that happened that week, or anything randomly that happened that week that was important to them. It could be something they were really proud of, or something they were happy about, or that brought them some emotion. And so this really became a staple in our family for many years. And people remember being at our house and being just a little bit intimidated at first, but then being so very grateful as to what it brought out in people. So it's still very meaningful to me. And though I couldn't bring all of them here with me, the most meaningful thing to me is my 3 adult children who continue to bring me just so much, and who I now am in a position to learn from, not just to teach. So that's what I brought for you.
You get an A+.
Do you still do the Shabbat dinners with the R?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I'm in this big house by myself at the moment, although Paris is here for a couple of weeks. But so it's been a little more spread out. We do them, but it's definitely been more spread out.
And are you golfing with your brother-in-law? Because that is definitely a hobby of his.
Joe is like a PGA professional. And yes, I do golf with him. And it's very, very fun. And it's wonderful to have that connection with him. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Well,
I love that your Shabbat dinners had your own version of this favorite things, going around and talking about something that was meaningful or special or something that happened. I think that's great. And we were To do that too in the beginning, by the way. Like, you want to bring something truly meaningful to this conversation, and sometimes they're just whimsical or fun things, but you guys did your own version of that. I think that's fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, we often do the highs and lows. And I'm rethinking that, because sometimes my kids they're young adults as well, but sometimes they get caught up in the low and they keep talking about the low. And then they're like, no highs. And I'm like, wait, let's just do highs. But, of course, it's okay to talk about the lows and the difficult times, but I like the story idea. And you're just so inspirational. You're so amazing. We're just in awe of you and your story and how you're pushing yourself forward and you're finding your way home again. I know I always relate to Dorothy. In fact, I have this mug. I just love it. You always had the power, my dear. You just had to believe it in yourself. Because, I'm on this journey and I often feel lonely, and, we go through roadblocks and bumps and wicked witches and all of that. And we need each other. We need this support. So thank you for supporting us. And thank you again so much for joining us today. And I know this episode is going to reach so many people's hearts and minds and help encourage them to live their best self.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
It was really fun to be with you guys. Thank you.
So what I learned from Amy and her writings and her teachings can be related to the Wizard of Oz once again. I learned lessons of courage, like the lion, love, like the Tin Man, knowledge, like the Scarecrow, and of course, finding your way home, like Dorothy. I feel that Amy's talked a lot about beckoning in the lovely, bringing in the good, and good will come for you. What you focus on comes to you. How we are all connected and the ripple effects of connection. How really the lion who is afraid really just needs to walk through the fear instead of around the fear. How always trusting the magic. There's serendipitous moments in everything that we do in our life. Filling that empty space on your journey, on your yellow brick road, is so important to recognize that you fill it with love and connections and good people that support you. Figuring things out as you go, the Scarecrow, always wanting knowledge, you don't have to have the answers all the time. It's okay to figure things out as you go. And going for it, going to it, how important that is to just push each day and go to whatever makes you feel or come alive. Also, I love how Amy takes a look at words and turns them upside down or mixes up the order, and how I, again, relate to the Scarecrow, looking at life in the brain that he has, but not quite understanding how things go together, but seeing the magic in the words. Finally, what Amy talks about the most is making the most of your time here, finding those things that make you you. It's not the wizard who's going to give you these answers. It's you inside tapping into those qualities and understanding that you have them all along. Just like Glinda the Good Witch says, you've always had the power, my dear. You just have to believe it for herself. I have this on my mug that I use and drink almost every day, and it reminds me of all the qualities that we have in each other. So just like the Munchkins supporting Dorothy on her journey and her friends, the lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man, and of course her dog Toto, giving her the support and empowerment that she needs, she finds her way home. Just like Amy, just like Jason have found their way home in their own special way. Thank you so much for joining us on Grateful Goddesses, and I hope that you make the most of your time here and that you are able to find your way home as well.
Unleashed your inner goddess yet? Thanks for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses. We invite you to visit our website, www.gratefulgoddesses.com, to access today's show notes as well as other helpful resources. Don't forget to leave a review. Until next time, stay strong and empowered to be a grateful goddess.